You're listening to the Faith and Other Oddities podcast, brought to you by the Raven Creek Social Club, where we talk about faith and other oddities. For questions, comments, or to be part of the conversation, join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can find us at Raven Creek SC. Now for your hosts, Emily Dixon and Nathan Underwood.
Everyone, welcome to the show. Things are a little different this week, as you might be able to see. We're not quite square with the room today.
We're askew.
We are askew, and the camera's at a different angle. So we have in the studio with us Justin Westemorland, and we're going to kind of talk to him. He is a church planner, planning a church here in Norman. He is certified.
I'm certified.
Certified workout personal instructor, personal trainer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Sometimes I don't speak well.
I thought you were going to say he was certifiable.
Certifiable.
Which is different connotation.
He is a church planner.
Yeah.
So we don't.
Insanity.
But we're going to be talking to him, kind of get to know him a little bit better. And so, Justin, thanks for coming on the show. And
got it.
We just want to take a moment. And first off, let's let everyone get to know you a little bit. So what is your background?
Right. Yeah, so thank you for having me on the show. This is a privilege and honor. First time to ever be a guest on a podcast. So thank you. Oh, yeah.
And podcaster. I'm sorry. I forgot. Justin also is a podcaster. He has the Fully Alive podcast, which we'll talk more about in just a little bit. But
right.
Yeah, first, just kind of give us a bit of your background. And one thing that we talked about earlier, and this is the part that kind of intrigues me, is you talked about you didn't grow up in church. You kind of came to it. Did you say your senior year in high school?
Or near the senior year, yeah.
Okay, and now that's something that fascinates me because I grew up in church, so I'm going to stop talking and let you tell us about that.
Yeah, okay, so the way I understand it, my parents left the church pretty early on when I was born, and we never went to church, basically, unless the grandparents were visiting. Now, so my grandparents, very involved in the church, extremely involved, every Church of Christ background, Southern Baptist background. So every time the church doors are open, they're in the church.
Yeah.
Well,
sounds familiar.
Right. So they're there. And I think that just maybe burned my parents out. That was maybe one factor, thinking through just issues that they've had. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they got out of there, it's like they ran for the hills. Mm-hmm. And just an anecdote, I mean, sometimes you get confirmed in a different type of church, and then once you get confirmed, you just sort of leave. Mm-hmm. And they left. And so when we moved away from home, Northeast Arkansas, I was born, to Texas, then back to Arkansas. When we got back to Arkansas, I had no interest in church, absolutely zero interest. My middle school friends were all involved in church, youth groups, things. And so eventually they would try to get me to go, and I'd go occasionally. Didn't want to have anything to do with the gospel. Just all social, no gospel. Hated it. Eventually, though, I became a believer, and this is imperceptible to me. Before the foundation of the world, I'm sure God had me, and He knew me, but He had all these other ways I had to get through and paths to get through before I got to becoming a believer. So this was late in high school. When I became a believer, it was one of these moments where I went home to my parents and told them what was going on, told my mom, and she said, hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. And so they've never been real, antagonistic, but there was a moment in college where I was like, hey, I want to go into ministry, and they were very, I think, terrified of that. and as maybe they should be,
Yeah. So, everyone wants a doctor or a lawyer because, that's their retirement plan, right?
That's right, yeah. And the ministry has not been that bad. I mean, we were making a decent living, and thankful for that. And but I think they say, hey, for the amount of education you put into it, you don't get paid. I think being a professor and something like that would be a similar calling. You're taking a hit.
Yeah. That's I definitely know from a few professors that I know. Well, I know Emily, you've taught adjunct at a couple at Bacone for a while, and I know that you got way more put into your degree than you've gotten out of it.
It's a labor of love.
And I know a lot of a couple professors that I know up at OU even have to write grants every year just to keep their position.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's definitely something you don't get into it unless you're committed. You're committed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was committed. I was all in. And I when I got to college, I was trying to see everything I could see about the church and Christ and get involved with all of the Bible studies, everything. I'm talking charismatic, Church of Christ, Campus Crusade, Baptist. Eventually found my way into a Presbyterian church through trying to date a girl in college. and she ended up bringing me to Park Cities Presbyterian Church in Dallas, Texas. I went to Southern Methodist University for college.
Okay.
And so it's kind of right down the street from there. Well, big church, very high liturgy, traditional, beautiful church building right there in the middle of Dallas. And they had John Piper speaking that morning, the first day I ever visited. And he was a big name. In fact, my freshman year, my roommate was obsessed with this guy who I'd never heard of, John Piper. And so these guys, these Reformed-ish guys, and R.C. Sproul kept coming across the pike for me. Well, Romans became a fascination of mine, and being a college kid and interested in the Bible, I started asking questions and got really into studying.
Yeah,
leading a Bible study. Eventually, that whole Park Cities Presbyterian thing happened. I got connected to the minister there, and the college minister, and the college minister who was involved in a ministry called RUF, or Reformed University Fellowship, took me under his wing, would answer questions, have me in his home, really shared his life with me, and discipled me in a way that I was like, I need to do this. I would love to do this. So college ministry was the next step for me after college. I was a mechanical engineering major, so I had two resumes: the mechanical engineering major resume, and then the youth ministry resume. So the idea was go and get a college, or probably go to a college town, work in a church, get some experience in a church, and then head to seminary. And then after seminary, get into the RUF campus ministry. And so that was the plan. I got married when I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, post-college at a church, working in a church in Knoxville there, right in the shadow of University of Tennessee. That's where my wife was attending school for graduate degree. She's from Alabama originally. So none of us, we're not from Oklahoma. We got married and we moved here later on. So we got
So what brought you to Oklahoma?
Yeah, great question. So eventually got involved in the RUF campus ministry, and then that brought me to Oklahoma.
Okay.
So I was campus. I was doing a degree for seminary over in Charlotte, North Carolina. The first RUF opening was in Tennessee. Took that one. Was there 5 years. Great time. And then we're looking to move. I always thought I'd kind of end up in Arkansas, back home. Yeah. But that job just wasn't opening up. So there's only one there at the University of Arkansas, and we got antsy and we're ready to move. And it was just a great time, and OU called, and we visited, and here we are. So we came to OU to work as a campus pastor. I was a campus pastor at the University of Oklahoma for 5 years.
Okay. So
that had to be interesting.
Yeah. I was saying, and OU is a good place, and the town's great. Oklahoma is kind of weird. It's like you got everything from just massive farmland, and then you like right in the middle, you got OU, and then it's like just a totally different culture from the whole rest of the state.
Oh, it's definitely different. Yeah. I mean, I would say if you got listeners in Alabama, OU's the University of Alabama, and then Oklahoma State's the Auburn. Right. Like Texas and Texas A&M. Like we're the Austin, Texas city, much smaller scale probably.
Yeah, see, this is where I show my ignorance. I have no idea about that.
But it's like you got a lot of conservative, the rural farming and the other schools, and then this is like very materialistic, I would say, and even secular in this city.
Yeah, say Norman's definitely the more liberal of the cities in Oklahoma, where you get more up in like Stillwater and stuff. It's still a lot of farm area, things like that. Yeah, still a very, very conservative crowd, which we still don't know which of those we fit in. We probably don't
fit. Yeah.
Well, we've said this often before. We're the most conservative friends our liberal friends have, and we're the most liberal friends our conservative friends have. So typically. Pretty much a devil's advocate. Let's look at both sides. Let's try to understand. So that leads us not to be put in those boxes very easily.
I read something the other day about our culture, and I was like, which culture? Our Western culture. Like the country is very divided politically, of course, but then within each ethnicity, background, every state, there's so much diversity in beliefs and how you define what your culture is.
Absolutely.
So when I just think it's laughable when people say our culture.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of commonality sometimes.
Yeah, there's a few things that kind of bind everything together, but then there's a lot of gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was one of our big issues because I taught at a Native American college.
Oh yeah.
And so the different were we going to be teaching white man's religion to Native Americans, or whose tradition are we honoring? And it became this whole schism at different points that we as faculty had to work and say, hey, we're not going to let this be divisive. And how do we pull the students together? So yes, when you say our culture, who are we referring to? And especially in Oklahoma, because we do have that Native American population. We have various cultures from around the world because of a lot of the missionary endeavors that have gone on and brought people in.
Right.
And so this is a good question. And I don't think people realize in Oklahoma how many ethnicities and nationalities and everything represented within our state there really is. I think everyone just kind of thinks of us as, oh, the country bumpkin farmland. Yeah. So, and that's not us.
Yeah.
Not all of us.
We were watching Napoleon Dynamite last night, and Napoleon claims that he has a girlfriend in Oklahoma. It's kind of this,
I guess I missed that part.
Removed. Yeah. We thought that we all laughed about that.
I think I struggled through it one time.
Yeah. I had some roommates in Dallas who loved that movie, and it's okay, but it's not my favorite flavor of humor.
It's kind of a strange film, isn't it?
It's a little weird, but okay. So you're at university for 5 years.
Going back to that.
Yeah. Did you go straight from that into the church plant, or have you done? So you just?
I just dropped right out of campus ministry in spring of 2016, and started leading a Bible study. I was leading a men's Bible study on Tuesday mornings. A small group of guys, and then we started meeting as a group on Sunday evening at OU in a building called the Forum Building. And then, we've always had God's provided very affordable, good places for us to worship and gather. And though we've been a small group and very little funding, actually, we got a little bit of money from the denomination. We've been able to keep the doors open and keep the thing going for the last 3 years. And as we've been able to grow, and people have been supporting us from outside, and I always say that I'm so grateful for that. That people will send money to start this church, because what they're doing is they're buying us time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that we can minister the ordinary means of grace, preaching, sacraments, the fellowship of the saints, praying for one another, praying for God's provisions, and over time, those things mixed together, the Holy Spirit rains down on those, and they produce fruit.
Right.
But you either got to have I think for church planting, you either got to have a massive group from the outset and just sort of hatch a church that way, or you kind of parachute in like we did. We didn't have a lot of fanfare when we started, and I read this book called Launch Large, I believe it was, or Plant Large by it was a Baptist guy, and they just like, hey, here's the formula, just do these things and you will have this massive group.
Right.
We kind of half-heartedly tried those things, but there's no one almost no one in Oklahoma looking for a Reformed Presbyterian church plant.
Right.
Seriously, I mean, we're an oddity. No one has a category for that in Oklahoma, and we're the very first in our denomination. So I was an intern at a church and it was ARP Church, Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, in seminary, and they had nothing in Oklahoma. And we're looking at starting a church plant. The denomination that's affiliated with RUF was not interested in planting a church in Norman. So we looked at a couple other places, and the opportunities were open for us to plant one through the ARP. So we went and got the blessing of the local church pastor in the PCA, which is the denomination we're with RUF. And they had their blessing. We didn't want to take anyone from that church and start from scratch with a few college students and a couple adults, and that was it.
So y'all really bootstrapped it.
Yeah. And I was telling a guy today I was running a 5K this morning, and after the 5K, I'm sitting around talking to one of the bank presidents here in town, and he was like, he's with the church that folded recently. It was bought out. This only happens in Norman, Oklahoma, apparently. Like Dallas, a church in Dallas bought it, like the biggest church in Norman. And that church diminished immediately because we're like, what are they doing buying us? Like they can't buy it. You can't buy a church. And so they've moved and started another church. And that one launched with like 1,100 people the first day. And every time he tells me that story, I'm just kind of like a little bit of me dies a little bit inside because he's like, I'd like to have 1,100 people one day. but like on the first day. But 1,100 people in one day. And so you're thinking about that. And I told him, I was like, no, I'm having to hustle a little more than that. Like, I'm like, I told him I was like the worm. I'm Dennis Rodman. I'm sorry, sports analogy, but Dennis Rodman was notorious for hustling, and I don't affirm all of his, the cross dressing and all the like silly stuff he's doing outside of NBA basketball when he was a player. But he was a hustle guy. He's going to get the loose balls, diving for rebounds. Just we're trying to I'm getting out there as much as I can to meet people and build relationships so that God can be working that.
Yeah, and Norman is like you said, there's things that happen here with churches that a lot of people, if they kind of saw, because I've got a couple different pastor friends, and I've heard some of these stories of stuff that goes on kind of behind the curtain, so to speak, and you just kind of go, wow, it's almost so much like corporate structures and corporate America type things that go on. Like I had a friend who, their pastor was being encouraged to leave his position because of, I don't know the whole story, because of improprieties. I don't know the details, but in the process of figuring all this out, the church bylaws were set up so that, the pastor could make unilateral decisions and just sold all the church resources out from under him. And it's stuff like that happens, and you're just like, what are people thinking? Yeah. And so, that's a whole nother topic.
What kind of witness is that to the world?
It's a horrible witness. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and now,
that's unfortunately too common.
Yeah,
it's really too. I mean, like the denomination I was in with before the PCA, it's been historically very difficult in Oklahoma because you've had situations like that, and that'll tank a lot of momentum for the church planning efforts because of the wreckage that leaves, not only just for the people outside, but those who go through that and are betrayed by leaders and shepherds. I mean, like, there's a reason in the Bible God comes down hard on the shepherds of Israel throughout the whole Old Testament. So, and so that's actually leads into the podcast too, because the John 10:10, Jesus came that we might have life and have it more abundantly, or full life, versus the thieves who come to take life and steal and destroy. And that's a direct reference in context to the false shepherds. Right. So Jesus is the true shepherd. So that's where kind of an interesting footnote is I believe in ministry. If I realize, hey, I'm not the guy to lead this church, and I'm getting in the way of it, or there's temptations, or there's sin that is going to cause this to fail, I need to have the integrity to get out of the way. Right. Because it's too important. The calling is too important for me to be messing it up in that way. And I can tank it in a minute. So
and anyone can. It's a huge responsibility. It's great that to have someone who recognizes that. Now, one of the things you said, and I want to touch on this because this is a topic that comes up a lot among different church leadership in this town specifically. You said when you planted, there was another church, you wanted to get their blessing. You didn't want to take their people. And here in Norman, there's a lot of, and I think a lot of people come here to plant churches because it is a college town. Right. And so every semester you've got fresh people coming into this town who have never been here before. And so what are some of the ways that some of the challenges you've had in getting people? Because like you're not wanting to steal from other congregations. What have you done to kind of overcome some of that?
Yeah. So we noticed right away that there's 60% of Norman, according to stats, don't go to church or unconnected with religious life in general. So we thought there's a lot of people out there. Yeah. And so, we don't have to get all the Christian guys, but you do need Christians. You need people who are mature, who have some leadership, and some wisdom about them, to be able to help and have a team. So we have sort of a credible online presence out there. And we've seen people when they do move here, professors and people here, families who want to move back. If they're looking for the kind of church we offer, they'll get online and see what we have to offer, and then they'll show up. And I think that's the best any church plant can do, is we have a decent, for our size of congregation, online presence. Yeah. And just meeting people out in the community who don't go to church is the best thing I've seen. And so I've gotten really into the business community, Chamber of Commerce, Norman Next, Toastmasters. I do a lot of stuff outside of church planning and training in the gym, so that I can build relationships with people I'm not going to see if I'm just in the office praying, writing sermons, and meeting with the people that already are on board. That's just that is just I think a unique point of my ministry at this time is to be one of those who goes and gets people.
Right.
Versus,
I love the online presence because so often in today's culture, we hear so many people preaching from the pulpit that online presence is a distraction. You're wasting your time. Let me hit my brother here. But the idea that being online is somehow sinful. And instead of seeing it as a tool that can be used for God's kingdom, they just want to shun it because it's a tool that's been misused. And so I love the fact that you're taking advantage of it and you aren't just pushing it away. And then going out, because one of the things I heard a pastor, and I'm going to butcher this quotation, he was talking about you preach to the people you hang around.
Yeah.
And so if you hang around church folks, you're just going to wind up preaching to church folks. You aren't going to be addressing real issues. So the fact that you're not just kind of cloistered away, which, I would love to be cloistered away with all my books and all my research stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you wind up with the same problem that universities are having when you have academics writing for other academics but not putting out any real useful information at times.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're doing what works and what is smart and what needs to be done. And I wish more churches would actually follow through with.
It's extreme. Well, the reason they don't is extremely difficult. It's much easier to go take the other, go be the cool church that all the Christians want and just appeal to the demographic that's going to support the thing, versus like preaching to dead people. We're preaching to dead. That's what we believe. The Bible teaches that we are dead in sin, unable to choose God. No one's going to choose him. But we're compelled to, because that's what Romans 10 says is the very way people are born again. They come to faith through hearing and preaching. So preaching's a big deal.
Yes.
But you got to get people to give it a shot. You got to get people to get in the door. So that's why we go to them. And we're, as Luther said one time, Martin Luther said, "Hey, we're beggars who have found bread and leading other beggars to the bread."
Yeah.
There's a anxiousness to it, urgency.
And I don't think a lot of people get that kind of anxiousness that we need to get this out there and we need to be getting the truth into the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah.
That's the latest marketing campaign. If we are being online, then we're looking for the greatest hashtag. We're looking for the greatest, I feel cute, so I might preach a sermon today kind of thing. And I actually played off that earlier today with Instagram, but
I wish you'd had consulted me on that. But we'll talk about that later.
We're not a church.
That's true. We're just people having conversation.
You got to keep your brand consistent, though.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. I think people who a lot of times think being a part of a church plant is just about being cool.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Oh, it's not cool. No. You are weird. If you're a Christian in a church plant, you are weird.
Yeah.
And Christians are weird. So here's the thing. My neighbors, I've lived in 2 houses in Norma. First neighbors, they're the nicest people in the whole world. They are gems. And we were like, hey, we're going to start a church. And they looked at us like, that is the strangest thing we've ever heard, because they go to like a really good church. There are great churches. They're going to preach the Bible and they're going to pastor them well. They're going to marry them, baptize their kids. It's going to be great. And they have a great small group, but that's where the Christians are going to go when they move here. If they move here from Waco, they got a job at Norman. If they move here from Dallas, wherever they're coming from, Tulsa, they're going to look online and find the cool churches, the big 3 or 4 that everyone's going to, the Christians go to. But the church plants statistically are going to get 50 to 60% of their growth from people who don't already go to church. And that those kind of churches that are filled with Christians really freak out the non-believers. The pagans. The pagans are not going to go to that church. They're not going to go to First Baptist. I don't want to say just First Baptist, but the ones they think of when they think of church. The big ones, the big mega churches in town. So that's why church planting is the way to go. I think every church needs to be planting churches beyond just the little ones.
Well, I had a friend. I mentioned something about a church plant in Norman one time, and one of my friends who is a believer, she asked, "Well, why does Norman need another church? There's a church on just about every block here."
What'd you say?
And I said, at the time I said I don't know, but I had to think about it, because that's one of those questions that you get a lot. I mean, I know you probably get that a lot as a church planner. But I thought, the question, it's practical, but it's also as a believer, it's kind of cynical because if you think about it, if we are evangelizing, if we are going out and building relationships and drawing people in, eventually the existing structures just aren't going to hold us if we're actually doing our job. And so it's kind of cynical to think that we won't grow beyond our current capacity. And so that was one of the conclusions that I kind of realization that came to me. It was like, oh no, we do need to be planting churches, because if we're not, then what are we doing?
And that's the question is why, and then the answer is, well, which church do you go to? And when they say I don't, then this is why we're planting church,
right?
Because there's 3 out of 5 people do not go to church,
right?
And then even in those 2 out of 5 that do go to church, it's maybe 1 in 6 weeks, once in 6 weeks, or once in every 2 months. It's like, it's not very, I mean, we're talking dying on the vine. Okay. If the means of grace is the way Holy Spirit works corporately, we have not just numbers problems, but health problems,
right?
We are unhealthy due to whatever we've done to de-church people out of church.
Well, and I hadn't thought about, I kind of, as you were talking about the people that are attracted to church plants, I can see several of my friends who definitely aren't going to go to that cool church or the church where the Christians go. And so that gritty aspect of it, and the people who, and I say gritty because most of my friends who were unchurched, they're kind of rough around the edges, and they're going to be swearing and drinking and smoking and all of the stuff that we were taught as good Southern Baptist kids you don't do. And a lot of church people won't associate with them.
Right.
Where I think if in a church plant there's more openness to, hey, we're going to walk with you and help you bring your life into alignment as an organic process. We don't just expect you to switch it all off. And because you woke up this morning and decided to believe, we recognize that you're a living, breathing being.
You're in process.
And and so I hadn't really thought about the church plant meeting that side of humanity's needs. Good. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm processing it all as I'm trying to. They say building a plane while flying a plane. We're launching, but we're like very. I mean, we're at the Death Star that's not even completely built. We can shoot the laser, but we got holes.
Right.
So we're struggling in a lot of ways.
Well, and I think there is a part of the church plant that kind of attracts people to that, because there are so many churches that are so big, and you have these production elements that sometimes maybe feel a little bit off-putting. And it's one of those things that if you're going to be an authentic portrayal of who Jesus is, and you're trying to be authentic to the size of your congregation and work through these things together with people who are coming in, you're not going to have all these production elements. And I've been to the church plant that tried to have all the production elements. And, there were 8 people in the whole room, including me and my wife and the pastor and the music leader and his backup singer. And they've got these speakers that are, big mains that would fill up a huge auditorium. We're like we're in like a grocery store front that's about the size of maybe a little bigger than a 7-Eleven. They've got a little rug put out to kind of demarcate where the stage area would be. And it's they've got like 5 rows of chairs, and you're just like, we've got 7 people here, guys.
It's very humble.
And it's but they were trying to have these big production things, and it was like they were trying to be something they weren't yet. And in a way that was just not conducive. Where if to me, I'm like, let's maybe take some of the chairs out. If we know we're not going to be over this many, let's grow together and figure out how to put things in perspective, as opposed to trying to overwhelm people or trying to have these big production elements. Because and that's kind of a preference thing on my part. I don't care for the smoke machines and laser lights and all that stuff. I like it simple. I like
I just open the Bible, read the scripture, pray, sing a little bit, but you're not going to be the big mega church, from the outset. If that's your goal, then you have that be part of the process and map that out.
Right.
But yeah, that's a really weird situation when you've got a praise band of 7 people and there's only 8 people in the room. Or something like that.
Yeah, and you're just playing over people at that point. And I kind of, me personally, I kind of think that some I'm not going to categorize all mega churches, but I think some churches get so big because they're not doing enough to raise up leadership who can go out and plant the churches. And that's opinion. I haven't done any market research, haven't done anything like that. But I think we should be able to see better leadership being grown up in these churches to where, instead of having one church of 2,000, you maybe have 100 churches of 200 or something.
Well, you're sending, you're in movement, you're in motion. Now to piggyback on my training thing, I don't think I should have a client for years and years and years and years and years. Like this person should be equipped to go out anywhere they are and get a good workout without me. Right. They should know exactly what to do. And so you're not dependent upon that leader. You have the leadership developed in the gym to where you know what you're doing. Yeah. And you can go out and do ministry. So the churches ought to organically crop up through, these guys are living in this part of the neighborhood. Let's start a Bible study and meet some neighbors and see how it goes. And then if you get a little momentum, then you can start another church. Yeah. And that way you got more people reached versus we all got to drive over here to Tecumseh and 36th or whatever it is, like that place, just let it kind of organically start, like
that place over there.
Yeah. Whatever place. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to go to that place when you got people there. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
We talk over each other all the time.
Yeah. And that's one thing, and when we moved, cause me and Mickey, my wife, we were both living in Texas. And when we got engaged, we talked about when we moved back up here, there was a church in Edmond that she liked when she was living up in North OKC that she said she wanted to go to. And I told her, I'm like, I don't feel right about having my church community be, 45-hour drive away from where I am. I want it to be part of the community I'm in. And that's one of the things. And I get a little discouraged whenever I go out and about and I don't see any of my friends from church anywhere I go. And it's like, where is everyone? What are we doing?
Well, and then there's the breakdown in accountability. So when you have those smaller churches where you do know people in the church, where if you go to a large church, a lot of times you don't know anyone. And being able to build those relationships that you have the accountability worked in, it can be responsive and it's not just a letter of a law thing, because after we hit a certain point in numbers, then it just has to be letter of the law as far as no grace and no understanding and no compassion to help people build back up. And so I see where the church plants really allow people, like I said, doing that organic growth and allowing God to work in their lives in a very, whatever speed he needs to do it, whatever speed they're responsive at, being able to do it at, whereas in collaboration, it's not just, you need to step up and look this way, talk this way. And so,
the personal touch there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not against large churches in general. I want to make that clear because I do think there are some who do a good job at allocating their people and dividing up into teams and then pooling those resources to get other things done. But I just think I've seen some bad examples of people not doing that. And
it's weird. So I'm thinking like in church history, it's weird. Like, I don't know if it's ever been like that, but it's weird.
It is.
So you're thinking about like, we have celebrity pastors. It's an American thing, I believe.
I do believe
celebrity pastors. Like, pastors
and
be
Aussie
famous
thing too now, apparently.
Oh, okay.
His Hillsong,
those guys. Yeah, but I would say they're probably using a very American style, Western style thing that they have going on there. So it's culturally similar. So there's a cultural similarity thing. But yeah, most of the church has been what I'd like to picture as the end of Star Wars Episode 8. You've got a beleaguered group surviving in a cave. That's the church historically. Beleaguered, lamenting psalms. You've got, God's holding out rewards to say, hey, keep going.
Right.
The life is great message every week doesn't resonate with where most people live.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And there's a full spectrum of emotions available in the gospel message to speak to versus everybody being excited with the big group all the time, passionate. That is not what we see in Scripture.
Right.
That's more of a more over-realize eschatology intruding upon the current situation.
Right.
You know, and so you're thinking about that, and you're like, is this even like the best model? You know, like let's divide. And the one thing that really drew me to this, I was in seminary, I was part of the ARP church there, I was an intern, and we had for the first time ever, not the pastor, but a ruling elder who would come to our house, sit down with us, ask us about our lives, pray with us. They'd pray with us in the church service occasionally, pray for us up front, you know, different families. And that, like you mentioned, Emily, the personal connection, because there's a plurality of elders in a Presbyterian church to where you've got the minister who's a teaching elder, and you have men who have the qualifications of the eldership who are you know, doing other jobs, but are part of the session, who are overseeing and shepherding the people in the church. So that there's a great advantage to having a plurality of leadership, because I'm one guy. I have zero time for seeing that many people and having that much connection. That would be necessary.
Well, and that's I love the idea of churches having like a teaching pastor, and then you have some, you know, like I said, like the elders who are kind of taking over some leadership stuff and doing maybe more some administrative type stuff, because there is a big emphasis in American churches. I don't know about how it is in you know, particularly like the ones we've been around, like Baptist and you know, because that's mostly our background. Is there is just so much just thrown on the pastor, where he is the person who's taking care of. He's in charge of building maintenance. He's in charge of the budget. He's in charge of just all these things. And so I like that idea where you have the teaching pastor, and they can zero in on teaching, because when you're wearing so many different hats, I mean, it's to the point where there is a company, and I'm not going to name them, but there are companies out there that, and I actually wrote for one of them for a while, they write sermon outlines and put together
the slides
and things for pastors for sermons.
Don't give my secrets away, man.
and I think it's an interesting setup. Because you do get so pastors, you get so bogged down. You don't have time to prepare. You
don't have time to pray or spread the word for yourself. And like, that's amazing. That's not what we signed up for.
Yeah. And now I have nothing against that company. I realize sometimes you just get overwhelmed with life and you need some help.
Resources.
And I wrote for them, and I had a great time. And I think it would be fun to do again if I ever get more time, because it's just, you know, you're putting yourself right in there where your job is research, and it's like, oh, this is fun. So
all the time in the Bible.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
But
that's your job. That's a good deal. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, we could. So anyway, I love that. But we could talk church theory all day. So one thing I want to talk about is, so you are a certified personal trainer,
sure,
as well as a pastor,
right?
So, to me, that's kind of a weird combination to hear, because we grew up in small town Oklahoma, where you didn't exercise, you worked. You know, you're like, we grew up on the farm, and you worked, you hauling hay, and people, and no joke, my dad, me and my dad worked the farm a little bit. Most of that was my uncles and things, but we did lawn work, we hauled brush, we would do all this stuff. So we were always just doing manual labor stuff growing up. And Dad would laugh about gyms. He's like, I lose weight every summer when I go to work.
Yeah.
And so to me, and also seeing a bunch of pastors, and this is no slight on pastors, but in the rural area, the pastor's not the person who's working out a lot typically.
Hit the buffet.
They generally like pie.
Peach cobbler and banana pudding. Come on,
fried
get it
chicken
right.
every Sunday. Yeah.
And so, to me, hearing this connection, and this is something, you know, Emily and I can attest to this. We were our family, until we hit about 30, our metabolism is such that I was 120 pounds when I got married.
Oh yeah, there's fighting weight right there.
And I mean, that was just it.
You could UFC it right there.
Yeah, and I've gained 80 pounds since I got married. But like my metabolism just
you hit 35 and it just quit.
Yeah, like my body decided it was done taking up the slack on its own. So this is actually, like, this podcast may actually be kind of a cry for help. This is actually a conversation my wife and I have had. is that I probably need to.
She's pushing for this.
Yeah,
one.
She's been really good. She's been really good, but I'm not huge, but I could probably stand to lose a little bit. So,
right.
Talk to me about your journey into getting to be a personal trainer and how that fits in with your life as a pastor.
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't do what I do if it wasn't for the health transformation I experienced almost 5 years ago. So I guess October 2014, I was probably my biggest I'd ever been. I was like 245 weight wise. And I mean, I'd been working out since college, high school football, rugby in college, always had a gym membership.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go into the gym and get literally no results. I don't think. My philosophy of eating was eat as much as you can for as little amount of money as you can.
Yeah.
Zero attention to anything nutrition wise. And so I was getting a little chunkier all the time. And about that year, January 2015, I signed up for a contest at Gold's Gym in Norman. And you had to sign up for personal training for I signed up for 2 sessions a week with a personal trainer. I didn't have, real big hopes for this, but it's 12-week commitment. And I was at that point, I was going to listen to anything that person told me. In my family history, there was another cousin of mine who was 8 years ahead of me in life and had just had a heart attack and died and left his family behind there and in Arkansas. And so that was sort of maybe in the back of my mind. There's all these life events that kind of unconsciously maybe affect you and your decision making. But I'd say just in God's providence, I came across this contest. Trainer reached out to me and said, "Hey, we think you got a chance of doing good in this thing and win." And so there's money involved. You could win a prize if you won. Yeah. So 12-week commitment. Thought I'd go for it. I went home, told my wife, I was like, I think I want to do this. And Meredith said, okay, well, you go for it. And it required for me a lot of selfishness for that 12 weeks to really hit the gym every morning, 6 days a week, do what they told me to do, actually start logging my calories in MyFitnessPal. Everything I put in my mouth, if I wasn't willing to put it in the app, I didn't put it in my mouth. I mean, I was absolutely committed, 100% to everything they told me to do.
Okay.
And I lost 48 pounds, 11% body fat, lots of inches. So what was involved in that was before pictures, measurements, tracking. Every time you go in the gym, what do you weigh? And so every morning I log on the FitnessPal and I log my weight and I measure, where I am. And so I think the progress I started to see from all the measurements and the tracking and the good direction I was getting really encouraged me to stick with it. And I started seeing, hey, the weight was coming off quick. So I lost all that weight, got in shape. I was looking for the next challenge. And so I started taking guys with me and showing them how to do that. They started getting results. And then eventually I got certified with the American Council of Exercise to be a trainer. And I started taking guys with me. I was charging them like $10 a week to meet with me twice over at Cross Point Church's gym.
Yeah.
They have some weights over there and a basketball gym. And I was running them through kind of a boot camp 2 times a week. And they were having great results and things were going well. So one of the guys I was training ended up saying, hey, why don't you take your show over to Downtown Fitness? And so I've been training, several clients a week now at Downtown Fitness and another gym in town, and I'm building up an arsenal at home to maybe be able to train some people at home if that ever comes about. So, but yeah, it's been a passion of mine, just seeing how that, like I said, I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing if I wasn't in shape or had gotten the transformation, because I feel like it's made me a better minister, better husband, better dad. Honestly, I have more energy, feel better. I can't imagine life the way it was before after these last 4 or 5 years, a different person. So it's like a second kind of born again moment. It's my charismatic moment, where I've got these gifts, like that I didn't have before, to make a theology joke, but really, I mean, it has been a life changer.
Yeah.
So, and I love to give that gift to other people. So.
I'll say that's encouraging, because that's something I've been trying to figure out, like what, and I'm not making any promises, especially not on mic right now. But that's one of the things I've noticed, like just kind of the last few years, I've really kind of slowed down. And part of it too is we've got 2 kids. So those take a lot of energy anyway. But
especially your 2.
They're 3 and 5.
They're sweet.
And they're great kids, but man, they have so much more energy. That's the part that appeals to me because I, especially the last couple of years, it's like I sit down to read and I make it a few paragraphs and I'm like, nodding off. So that's the part that appeals to me about it. But yeah,
the energy level.
Yeah, that's because it's one of those things that
you'll sleep better. It just compounds. And then once you get a certain point, your resting metabolic rate is so good that you can eat anything. Like you can drink all the beer you want, eat all the food you want, and it's the way you're designed. You function so well when you're physically trained. And so I don't call it exercise, I call it training. You got some goals and you're training for those goals. Whether it's a weight loss goal or you want to fit into a certain dress for a certain time or whatever, or it's I just want to be able to play with my grandkids or kids. Everybody has a different story. So when I'm meeting a new client, I'm always like, hey, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
What's worked before? What kind of injuries or conditions do you have that are going to put limits on you?
Mm-hmm.
And we need to know those and then get to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I say, and it really is amazing, like the way the human body is designed, because it sounds counterintuitive.
Yep.
Like when you think about starting it, it's like, wait, I'm going to eat less and I'm going to work more.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get more energy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't sound.
And that's the way of the gospel, right? It's like it doesn't make it's upside down. Yeah.
Exactly.
And backwards.
I love that. So yeah, now I got to say, I took first steps. I put air in the bike tires the other week, and now I actually have to get on it. That's
the first step, right? You got to have air in the tires.
So I know recently, a couple weeks ago, I listened to you did a podcast on procrastination, which this has been part of your journey as a trainer. Is you started a podcast because you want to talk to people about integrating this into your life, and it's got me thinking. It hasn't got me acting yet, but we're working that.
I love it.
But it does have me thinking. What's your advice to people who want to get started, who just have no background in exercise and fitness or anything like that?
Well, it's the first commandment of being fully alive. We have a new one on that one. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay.
I think I'm like 3 episodes behind.
You're right there. You're getting there. The first commandment is don't be gullible.
Okay.
Don't think it's going to be easy.
Right.
Don't listen to all the scoffers out there say it's no big. You'll be fine. You're going to be fine. Like the false prophets say everything's going to be fine.
Peace where there is no peace.
Yeah, right. It's not fine. You're not okay. That's the thing. You have to say, hey, I'm not okay, to where you're willing to listen. And that's when we get certified, you talk about building rapport with clients, and you have to listen and see, is this person ready to train?
Okay.
A lot of people are going to start and not finish.
Sure.
They're not going to progress. And it's a heart thing.
Right.
So you have to be like in the gutter, like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I have to move. I'm ready. And that's a lot of times where it's middle age and you're like, hey, I've got to do something here, or it's going to continue to go downhill. So that's what I'd say is don't be gullible and listen to your coach. Whoever your coach is, whoever that guy is you're listening to, you can get a live guy like me, or you can get a guy online, or you can get, just anybody that has a more objective view than you do of yourself. Somebody who's going to see not only your weaknesses, but where you could go. A vision for you that's bigger than what you could think. Because that was for me. That was a key. He's like, okay, we're 240. How much weight do you want to lose? Oh, 20 pounds would be great. I had no idea.
Right.
I had no idea that it was possible to lose 48 pounds in 12 weeks, but they did. And they knew what it took. And I didn't have that. And so I like to, the journey of the Fully Alive deal was I want to get my stuff out there. Because I'm only one guy. I'm talking to one person at a time. If I can get it on, I just spit there on the mic. Sorry.
That's the guest mic.
Okay.
So
Okay. Good. Sorry. If I can get it out there to other people, get it online, get a canon, so to speak, of what we do, what we believe, and be able to get the gospel out there a little more, then it's a win-win. I enjoy it thoroughly. It's a little bit extra work for me, but you guys love it too. You love doing a podcast. So,
so
getting
it's a lot of fun.
Getting it out there, so much fun. And so if I can move the ball a little further along, get that stuff out there. So I do like workout stuff on there, nutrition stuff, general themes, related to this. I did one today about parenting.
Yeah.
Just because that's an anxious time, of life, and it weighs on you, and just the gullibility of that, of people just wanting to tell you ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's complexities there, there's complexities there of every kid's different, every situation is different. Your wife may be working, your wife may not be working, you may be at home, you may not be, everybody's got different factors. So I like to have a fixed philosophy, but then flexibly apply it,
right?
To each individual. So when you're with a trainer, a good trainer is going to look at you and be assess where you are, and not just give you a cookie cutter workout, and look at your goals and figure out where you need to go and know how to take you there. So it's exactly like following the Lord.
Yeah,
it's lordship. It's the kingdom, and the kingdom has to be you got to go in, as Jesus says, and bind the strong man and overcome him.
Yeah,
the strong man is our sin nature, and
sure.
it's one to overeat. It's not knowing what to do, and so on the Bible or in the gym. Yeah, a lot of people know just enough to be dangerous,
right?
It's like they can go in there and get themselves hurt.
Yeah,
or they can hurt people, And so, for instance, Christianity, they're like, oh, Jesus just loves people. Okay, well, that's very unnuanced. Okay, let's talk about what that actually looks like. I just want to be like Jesus. I'm going to love people. So is that really what the Bible says at its heart? Okay, so yeah, we can go in the gym. You think you got to just go bench press and bicep curls, and you're gonna be fine. Well, no.
Right.
Treadmill. It's you got to have some more information. Okay.
So what do you say to people? Because one of the things I've heard is, okay, if you're going to work out and you're going to put all this time into your diet, that's so self-centered, and that's counter to what the Bible says. Uh-huh. And so why in the world would a Christian spend time and money at a gym when they could be studying or preaching or whatever?
Good question.
So how do you...
Have you heard that before?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. I feel like I get that. And to your point earlier about the Baptist minister in Oklahoma who's really out of shape, and those guys didn't grow up with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they didn't grow up with WWF, for me, those are icons, in sports. It's sports has become a bigger deal too. It's
sure.
Heroes have these chiseled bodies and work on their physiques and steroids are a factor too,
Right.
But it's just these ideas of that's a healthy image, that's an obsessive thing that people are into these days. Well, so I'm not obsessed like that, but I feel like that's something that more and more people are getting into is more fitness stuff. I just think you got to be aware of, I'm going to spend some selfish time working on me, because that's studying and working out. One's not more holy than the other. We have this sort of this scale of the ladder of spirituality, and we put the eating and working out way down here. And I'm going to preach the gospel and do missions work here. And then you've got your quiet times here and your worship here. Well, or you're helping the poor. It's literally, if you don't have the energy and the stamina to read and to study, you're going to be less efficient.
Right.
I think you can be way more efficient if you're focused. And that's another, just another challenge to overcome, to where you're going to be you're going to have more confidence because you're using principles in God's world due to his providence and his ordering of creation and the order that you can see, and taking principles through common grace insights and applying those. That actually gives you more faith in God and confidence that you put in work and God's in it. Mm-hmm. And so doing any job, one job's not better than the other. That was a big Reformation point. Is that the holy people are not the ones in the monastery.
Right.
They're out there, sacking groceries or whatever whatever the thing is that you're called to do.
Yeah.
Shredding paper. Just be the best paper shredder you can be. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
We actually covered some of that on the last podcast.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Because you talk about Joseph and the way, he worked with integrity. This is how he rose in ranking. And a lot of us tend to think, oh, well,
yeah,
it was just a wonderful gift from the Lord that God just put that in his hands. But it's no,
hard work.
People saw that God was with him through his actions. So yeah.
Hard work's never fun.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're coming up on time.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Is there anything? Okay, a couple things. So I already asked you about someone wanting to get started on working out.
Oh yeah.
So you're also big on church planning.
Yeah.
What's your advice? If you could give like just a little bit of advice to someone who wanted to start, not asking for us, just for anyone listening.
Dear God, not us. No, please.
Yeah, we'll talk about that off mic. But no, what's your advice for someone who thinks God's calling them to start in with church planning? What would you say to them?
Fascinating. That's a great question. Why would you do this? No, I would go back to Charles Spurgeon, letters to his students. He says, if you can go and do anything else besides this, go and do it.
Right.
That's a great line, by the Prince of Preachers there, Charles Spurgeon. If you want to do this, I'm going to use a mentor guy's line. He says, you need to be willing to be dirty with the sheep. I think is what he says. You need to be willing to be with people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the messiness of their lives and be authentic and transparent, be honest about life in general and be willing to do some maybe unorthodox things. I don't think I wouldn't take my model and say, do this, but maybe kind of be creative a little bit.
Yeah.
On what you're going to be. So I think, but just having you got to ask, I don't know. I mean, I would say know yourself and get other people's advice and then go from there. Get a lot of feedback from other people and encouragement and get sent. I'd plan a denominational church. Don't go on your own.
Right.
Plan a church from someone else who's going to lay their hands on you, pray for you, support you, and send you elsewhere. That's what I would say.
Sounds like good advice. Well, Justin, tell everyone real quick before we head out where they can find you online. If they're interested in just podcast or personal training or also Trinity. I mean, you're a guy with a lot going on.
Too many hats.
So yeah.
So trinitynorman.com is our church website.
Okay.
So you can get on there, find sermons, anything that we're doing on there. It's not a very dynamic website, but it gets it done. It has like
we've got one. Yeah. We got one of those for Raven Creek. So
if you want to know where we meet, it's 324 West Main Street, Common Ground, 10:30 every Sunday.
Okay.
We got various. If you're looking for a great men's Bible study, I got one of those. Tuesday morning at 6:30. We're going through books of the Bible, been through Romans. So that's open to anybody. I do, stuff like that. Training wise, if you want to get in on that, the best way to get in on that, if you got questions, even I'll take questions,
Mm-hmm.
If you want to meet up, we can do that too. But justinwestmoreland@gmail.com is my email. Happy to answer any questions. And then, I work out with people all over, wherever and whenever, we can do it. So just that's that. And then, the Fully Alive podcast. So that is on YouTube and on, I think it's 8 other like places where you can listen to podcasts.
Yeah. I know I get it through the Apple Podcast app.
Yeah.
And I saw that you're hosted through Anchor. So anyone who's got Anchor app, they can do that.
The guys who know podcasts, it's Fully Alive podcast is what it is.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you found us, you can probably find him. Just go to Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
And if I can speak, and search Fully Alive podcast.
And we'll put a link in the notes.
Yes, well, I'll also put a link in the notes.
You guys are so kind.
Well,
I gotta have you on our podcast, and we'll do a transformation story. That's right. So I'm going to wait till the transformation happens.
We'll have to. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about it after the school year ends. That's when. That's when I might be more interested in that.
Gotcha.
Right now, things are a little. It's the end of the school year, and your wife works at the same school.
I love it.
That me and my wife work at. So you know how the end of the school year gets for teachers. So
absolutely.
Anyway, well, for everyone else out there in internet land,
so great.
Come back and see us. Justin, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing some time.
I'm showing too much leg here.
It's okay. I was actually kind of worried you might think, because the lighting's really bad in this room, and I'm kind of worried you might look too pale, but I promise you in person, he's got a healthy complexion. He's
I'm not showing very well for the online crowd. They're like, who is this pasty ghost guy?
Yeah, our studio, we still have to get some lighting in here. But anyway,
great.
Come back, join us next week.
It's a pleasure.
Oh yeah. And if anyone out there, you want to be part of the conversation, ravencreeksc.com gets you to every place. Also hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Raven Creek SC. And if you really like the show, patreon.com/Raven Creek SC, help keep the lights going, maybe get us some better lighting. I don't know. But anyway, that being said, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Faith and Other Oddities podcast, a Raven Creek Social Club production. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like what you've heard, please write us a review on iTunes or consider supporting us on patreon.com/Raven Creek SC. As always, thank you for listening, and don't forget to join us next